This episode is brought to you by our friends and sponsors at Imperial Organic Yeast. Casey at Imperial tells me they're expanding their guaranteed in-stock program for commercial customers. Imperial now has 10 strains that are guaranteed to ship to commercial breweries from both their East and West Coast production facilities. This gives commercial customers additional flexibility to brew what they want, when they want, and helps Imperial maintain their commitments to quality, transparency, and service. On the homebrew side, you know we love Imperial Organic Yeast. I like to say my stir plate is dusty because of their leading pitch rate of 200 billion cells per easy-to-open package. If you're on the commercial side, check them out, imperialyeast.com, and find out how you can get 10 strains guaranteed from both East and West Coast production facilities. And if you're a homebrewer like me, ask your local homebrew store about Imperial Organic Yeast. imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, March 25th, 2021. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, homebrewer Johannes Fahrenkrug takes a brew in a bag one step further by introducing the concept of brew in a Ziplock bag. Johannes put a new twist, or maybe a new zip, into using a sous vide stick for small batches of beer. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, and if you go to basicbrewingshop.com, you can find our DVDs and our brewer's logbooks. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook as well. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. And thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. I'm releasing a new video to the general public this Friday about my Belgian-inspired brown ale brewed with Sugar Creek malt. Financial supporters have already seen it. This is the first video featuring footage from my fancy new video camera. My old camera died about several weeks ago after about 11 years of loyal service. And I'm hoping that you'll enjoy the new look of the B-roll shots, and I hope to do some more fun stuff with the camera when it's safer to do so. I'm still shooting the regular behind-the-scenes footage for upper-tier Patreon subscribers, so don't worry there. Brew Day nowadays is a juggling act with two cameras and a microphone, better than two turntables and a microphone, I think you'd probably say. But I'm glad to do it as a thank you to financial supporters. Let's take a look into the mailbag. Ed from Garrettsville, Ohio, wrote after hearing Nick Johnson talk about his experiments with different malts and yeasts in brewing Graf. That was a fun one, and tasty, too. Ed says, I enjoyed the recent episode with Nick Johnson where he talked about his Graf experiments. I'm asking how I can get a copy or summary of Nick's experiments and recipes. I brewed a Graf this past year using apple cider from a local orchard, pale two-row malt, and fermentus K97 yeast. It came out surprisingly tasty, Ed said. So much so that I plan to try some other variations when cider season comes around again. Well, I'm glad you liked the show, Ed. I wrote to Nick for details about his brews, and Nick says, the recipe was very easy. I boiled 2.5 gallons or 9.5 liters of water with 3 pounds or 1.4 kilograms of liquid malt extract for approximately 30 minutes. That's in metric, that's 30 minutes. Procedures were the same as a normal extract brew day, Nick says. I added the resulting 2.5 gallons of wort to 2.5 gallons of Musselman's cider. I added the recommended amount of yeast nutrient from the sachet. The mixture cooled fairly quickly, and I pitched the recommended amount of yeast for the quantity, probably on the high end, Nick says. The Graf spent 3 weeks in the primary, and then I bottled with carb tabs. Nick says, I tried to keep the recipe very simple so I could really isolate the variables of liquid malt extract and yeast. In the other Graf experiments I did, I took a beer recipe and divided everything by 2 and added the resulting wort to 2.5 gallons of cider. So a half and a half kind of a thing. So there you go. Whatever Nick did, the results were delicious, and it sounds like an easy and fun brew day. You know what else makes your brew day fun? You smell a segue there. An electric brewing system from our friends and sponsors Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa. Really excited about the warmer weather that we're getting into now, and because I love brewing out on the patio. But with electric brewing, you don't have to brew outside like you should be doing if you have a propane system. HighGravityBrew.com can take the pain out of propane with an electric system that will fit your wants and needs from 5 gallons to 2 barrels. HighGravityBrew.com has you covered. And High Gravity is also, as you probably know, a full-service, fully stocked homebrew ingredient store, too. Take a look at their Build Your Own Beer page. If you're like me, you'll be amazed at the variety of ingredients available all on that one page. Base malts, specialty malts and grains, all kinds of hops, liquid and dry yeasts, adjuncts, syrups, depends on where you are, extracts. HighGravityBrew.com has it all, and your order total is updated as you shop on the bottom of the window when you use the Build Your Own Beer page. Very cool. And you'll be supporting a family-owned and family-run company who support us. So if you like this show, check out HighGravityBrew.com and throw Desiree and Dave some support. You've heard them on the show before. You know who they are. Good folks. Check them out and tell them that we sent you. HighGravityBrew.com. It's HighGravityBrew.com. Okay, let's talk to Johannes Fahrenkrug about his tasty experiments with the sous vide stick and Ziplock bags. Johannes Fahrenkrug, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, James.
Was I close?
Yes, very close. Right on the money.
Well, when you say it, it sounds more sophisticated, nicer. But,
well,
you know, I've got that Arkansas to deal with. So Now, you wrote me a while back with a very interesting technique that I don't think I've seen before. And we'll get into that, obviously, since it's the topic of the conversation. We'll get into that here in a couple of minutes. But first of all, I want to kind of get some background on you. How long have you been into beer and brewing, and what's your path been?
One of my best friends, Justin Jensen, he got me interested in brewing about, I want to say maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And it took me a while to actually take the hobby up for myself. But, whenever I would visit him, he would kind of be brewing something and I would help him stir the mash or something else. And I loved the process. I love, of course, beer and the flavor of beer, and just find it fascinating to do and make things yourself that usually you only buy in the store. And so only after I moved to the States, I actually got together with two of my friends, Jeff and Chris, and we bought one of those, beer brewing kits that comes with an extract kit and a big bucket and everything. And then we started brewing. And that was, I think, the end of 2013.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, a few years.
And you stuck with extract for a while, or did you go to all grain fairly quickly?
So I stuck with extract maybe for a year or two. But, I still remember my first time stepping foot into a homebrew shop in Brooklyn. And I was just overwhelmed with, the different grains. And I had no idea, how does anybody even know how to pick something or, how to put together a recipe. But my interest was piqued. And I actually bought a book from the Brooklyn Brew Shop about small batch beer making. It's the Brooklyn Brew Shop's beer making book by Erica Shea and Stephen Vallant. And it has 52 small batch all grain recipes. And it kind of got me started because you needed minimal equipment, just, a colander and water, and that was about it. And they showed you how to do everything, on an apartment scale on your stovetop. And that got me into all grain, and I've done a few extract batches in between, but mostly I just stuck with all grain.
And are you still small scale?
So, yes, I think anybody would consider the small scale. My normal batch size is 2.5 gallons,
Hmm.
and a while ago I got two 2.5 gallon ball lock kegs. So I have two little kegs because I noticed I like to brew a lot, but 5 gallons is quite a bit of beer, even if you give stuff away to friends and bottle and whatnot. And so 2.5 is kind of the sweet spot for me. But a few months ago, I kind of rediscovered the joy of going even smaller, of just doing like a gallon or a gallon and a half.
Yeah, the very small batches are a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
obviously with this show, with all the experimentation that we do, as you said, 5 gallons is a lot for something
Yeah.
weird or experimental that you haven't done before, and you're just trying it out. So, obviously, I've been a proponent of small batches for a long time. I think I made my first small batch of beer like back in 2005. It wasn't long after we started the podcast. So,
Hmm.
yeah, we love it.
Yeah. And of course, from your podcast, I got a lot of inspiration for, small batches and when you got the hardware store water jug, I got one too. And, those things are great. And then, of course, the 1 gallon glass jugs are nice too. So,
I use
yeah,
my.
thank you for the inspiration.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I used my 3 gallon water jug, hardware store jug yesterday to brew my 2 gallon 100% Rauch malts beer.
Perfect. Yes.
Johannes and I practiced a little bit beforehand. But boy, the house smelled like smoked bread by the end of the
Ooh.
day, which sounds a little wacky, but boy, it smelled really good. Anyway, so talk about this new. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do what you're doing. Talk about how this technique that you've come up with and how you got to it, how you came up with it.
Yeah. So maybe it's for good reason that nobody else is doing it. Maybe it's a terrible idea. And I'm not trying to pretend that this is the best thing since sliced bread. But a few months ago, let me start actually a little earlier. So a few years ago, my wonderful wife, Simone, got me a sous vide stick. One of these Anova precision cooker 800 watts sous vide machines, with the purpose to use it for brewing, because I had read a few articles about sous vide brewing and kind of wanted to try it. So she surprised me with it, which was very sweet. And I used it a few times, but I just wasn't happy with the process. So the normal sous vide cooking or beer making basically involves putting the sous vide stick into the mash. And then kind of separating the grains with either your grain bag or putting the sous vide stick into a hop spider or something. But the stick and the heating element itself are exposed to the sweet wort.
Mm.
And the machine itself is not intended to ever be put into anything else but water, really. So that was one thing. So it was always a pain to clean that thing up afterwards.
Now describe the sous vide stick. Is it like a heating element with some sort of impeller
Right.
to propel the water around and kind of get a circulation going?
Yes, exactly. So it's a heating element and the little propeller and a temperature probe, and then you just dial in your temperature. You hook it on the edge of your boil kettle or just a pot, and you turn it on, dial in the temperature, and then it just goes to work and heats up the water, and then it only turns on the heating element if it has to adjust the temperature again. So it keeps it even, I think, even to the precision of half a degree, which is pretty nice, right?
Yeah.
And but the thing is, with these sous vide mashing techniques that are out there, usually because you have to separate the grains from not getting into the sous vide stick, the temperature distribution is not very good at all. So, it almost looks like it's only circulating in place, like right around the sous vide stick itself, and doesn't really get through the mash. And it's a mess, right? So, a while ago, like 3 or 4 months ago, I wanted to do a few small batches again, and I wanted to try it again. And I did it with the grain bag, and I put the sous vide stick into a hop spider, and I noticed that the temperature in the mash was like 15 or so degrees off, because it was never really reaching the outskirts of the mash. And I did a few more experiments. I tried to mash in an Instant Pot, and the temperature in there is not accurate at all. It was like off by 20 degrees or something. So that didn't work. And then I thought, why don't I just do the mash the way you would cook a steak with sous vide? And that's putting it into a Ziploc bag.
Right.
And so I thought, we have these 1-gallon Ziploc bags, and, can I just put the grains in there and then put the strike water into the Ziploc bag and hang that whole thing into a water bath? And so I did it. So I crushed my grains. I put it in a Ziploc bag. I used the sous vide stick to heat up strike water. And actually, I was heating up the full amount. So mash water plus strike water in a pot. And then once it was heated up, I used, the amount that I calculated in my brewing software for the mash. And I used a ratio of 1.25 quarts per pound.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put that in the Ziploc bag, and I used a whisk to kind of stir everything up so I don't have dough balls. And then I
avoid the dough balls.
Yeah, you definitely want to avoid those. And I sealed up the Ziploc bag and then put it in the water bath and, let it sit there for about an hour. And then the great thing was that the water that I used for the water bath was filtered water. So I was heating up my sparge water at the same time. And I emptied the contents of the Ziploc bag into a metal colander over another pot, and then sparged, and then just went about my brew day normally. And it worked really well. I hit my numbers, and I'm like, maybe there's something to it. And then since then, I think I brewed like 6 or 7 batches like this, and I quite enjoy it.
Now, my question to you, I got this, your initial email, and I said, well, that's interesting, and you had pictures and everything, and I said, my response was, it sounds interesting, but I'm trying to come up with advantages as to why I would do your method as opposed to what I do, which is I do brew in a bag, even with the small batches. I have a smaller mesh bag, and I mash everything in the one kettle. And then to keep the temperature the same, I preheat my oven to the mash temperature rest, or mash rest temperature, and I just keep the whole pot and the bag and everything in the oven for the mash rest, and then just take out the bag, and there I've got my wort. So convince me, Johannes. Why should I why should I switch to your version, or why does your version work better for you than what I do?
So, I mean, if your version works for you, you should probably just keep doing what you're doing.
Good answer.
However, for us, so our oven, the temperature is just not accurate. So it's like, 20, 30 degrees off from whatever it shows. So I would not trust it with my mash. So for me, I think the advantages are as follows. One of them is that I don't have to babysit my mash. If I do it on the stovetop without the sous vide stick, I would have to be careful to kind of turn the oven on and off to apply heat and everything and to stir it and all of that. When I use the sous vide stick, I just kind of put it in there, set the temperature, and forget about it, which is nice. Another thing is, I think for people who want to get into all grain brewing, but don't want to spend a ton of money on dedicated all grain brewing equipment, this could be a good way to go, because sometimes on Amazon you can get some of these things for, as low as $60-$50. And then you have an accurate mash temperature, for small batches, but still. A few other things that could be nice to do or to try is you can easily do a step mash, because you can just, dial in a different temperature and then go through different steps in the step mash. And one thing that I tried too, which is kind of nice, is you can actually do 2 mashes for 2 different beers at the same time.
Wow.
Because they're separated. You have 2 different Ziplock bags in the same water bath. You can actually mash for 2 different beers at the same time, which I tried, and also my friend Justin, who got me into brewing, he tried it too. And the first time, which is not the fault of this process necessarily, but it ended in a disaster story, which I encouraged him to send in at the end of the year. So I think it would check off some of the boxes on the bingo card for.
He wasn't injured, was he?
He was not injured. No,
well, that's good.
So yeah, but it's possible to do multiple mashes, and he did one yesterday. And he had the idea of actually freezing one of the mashes afterwards. So just, separating the sweet wort from the grains, and then basically having the basis for an extract beer sometime later.
Huh.
So you don't even have to brew both beers at the same time.
So it's kind of taking no chill to a different step. I mean, with no chill,
Right.
You take your wort, and then you've got this container. And whereas I recommend that you ferment the next day, just for food safety's sake. Some people take it a lot longer than that. Freezing the wort, especially for a small batch, would be safer,
Right.
Because you're not just letting sugary water or sugary wort stay at, say, room temperature, for an extended period of time. So,
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And another thing that's, depending on the style that you brew, you can actually do a thicker mash with the simplicity of brew in a bag. Because you have this water bath that you use. I actually did 1 or 2 beers where I was lining my kettle with a mesh bag, and then did the whole brew in a Ziploc bag thing. And then when the mash was over, I just dumped the contents of the Ziploc bag into the sparge water and then lifted out the bag.
Huh.
So you still have to clean up your mesh bag, unfortunately, after that, but it's very quick, and you have, the advantages of a thicker mash, whatever those might be. Yes.
Yeah, the one advantage that I did see, right off the bat was the little brew in a bag that I use is kind of a pain to clean.
Yeah.
And I don't use soap because I'm afraid of ruining my head retention by leftover Dawn residue or something. So I just rinse it really, really well. But it's the little grains get stuck in the mesh, and it's just it's kind of a pain.
Same here.
I mean, it's not debilitating or anything, but it's rinsing out a Ziploc bag would be a lot easier. And I would assume you can reuse the Ziploc bags as well, right?
Right. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, we're big.
And actually,
we're big Ziploc bag reusers as much as we can.
Yeah, me too. I always try to kind of strike a balance between wasting 5 gallons to rinse it out to save one piece of plastic. It's like you have to find the balance of where you actually help the environment.
Well, luckily here in Northwest Arkansas, we've got an abundant, stable water supply. Knock wood.
Good. That's great.
A lifetime of or eon, the plastic bag lasting eons in the landfill is the worst sin than rinsing it out with some water.
Yeah. There's one advantage still that I actually just came across the other day. I was researching something and I came across the term LODO brewing, which I had never heard before. And it stands for low dissolved oxygen, where people try to keep the evaporation rate at under 10% when they do a boil, and just try to keep the hot side aeration as low as possible to bring out most of the malt flavors.
Huh.
So, of course, there's a lot of discussion about it, whether that's good or bad or useful or not. However, for people who are into that kind of thing, I think keeping it in a Ziploc bag during the mash could potentially help with that because it's not exposed to oxygen at all during the mash.
Interesting. Let's take a quick break to talk about our friends and sponsors, Ricky and Kelly at Groenfell Meadery in Vermont. Ricky and Kelly are very excited about the latest entry in Havoc Mead's Sour series, Sour Mead Maker, the Raspberry Lime Ricky. It's a tart and delicious craft mead made with honey from Vermont and a bright blend of raspberry and lime. I'm getting thirsty. And at only 5.1% ABV, it's perfect for some spring sessions in the great outdoors. And you may want to hold on to the can. It's so beautiful. It's got great artwork from Havoc customer Brandy Slavinsky, who won a contest to design the label. And man, there was stiff competition. Groenfell posted, and Havoc posted on their social media some of the competitors in that competition. Brandy's label is awesome, especially if you know Ricky. On the label is a likeness of Ricky the Mead Maker, and he kind of looks like he's been turned into a cool plant. Feed me, Seymour, he's seeming to say. Feed me some delicious meads. Check out Sour Mead Maker and all the other crushable and delicious meads and honey beverages from Groenfell and Havoc at family-owned and operated Groenfell.com. That's GROENNFELL. Now, I recently replaced my Instant Pot because after 3 years of being used like 2 or 3 times a week, the high-pressure sensor gave out on me. So I went and I got a new one, which was cheaper than the old one, and it's got more features, including sous vide. So it's got a sous vide button. And I've only played with it just a little bit. I set it for, say, I think it was 135 degrees Fahrenheit just as a testing set point, and it was like 7 degrees too low.
Right.
So then I changed the temperature up to like 145 degrees. I tried to compensate, and then it hit that temperature more accurately. So I'm going to have to do a lot of playing with this thing to see. What the tolerances are, or before I put like a steak in there, and trust it. So the sous vide stick seems like it would be, a lot more intuitive in that you can dial in the temperature accurately right there on the thing, and track the temperature more accurately.
Correct, and that's definitely a big plus. The thing I found out was of course, there's a limit of how much grain you can put into these bags. Mm-hmm. And the more grain you have in the bag, the more off the temperature in the center can be. At least when you don't hit it with the correct strike water temperature at first, which I didn't. In the first few trials that I did, I just heated the water bath up to my mash rest temperature and used that when I actually used water to add to the Ziploc bag.
Right.
And then the temperature in the bag can be a little too low. So I think next time I'll definitely try to hit it with the strike temperature to make sure that it's accurate inside.
One handy strike water or temperature calculator that I've found And there's a whole bunch of calculators on this website. And I used to talk about it a lot. I haven't for a while. It's the Knights of the Mashing Fork website. So if you go to kotmf.com/tools, you can see a long list of calculators on there. And they're mash temperatures calculators, both the strike water, initial strike water, and then the additional mash rests if you want to elevate and do a multiple step mash. Those calculators were very helpful to me, before I got my electric system from High Gravity, and shameless plug. But I don't use the electric system for the small batches. So that that website is very helpful. For calculating your strike temperatures, and it probably help you out in this situation as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I usually use Brewfather, which I've been using for a little while, but I'll definitely check that website out. I have not heard of it.
It's pretty simple and intuitive. So you sent me, in order as a proof of concept, you sent me a box of beers, and this is an odd it's an odd story. You sent me a list of all these beers that were going to be in the box, and you were also very generous to send me some home roasted coffee, some home roasted wine infused coffee, which I've never had before, and it smells amazing. So I can't wait to try that. But there were only 2 beers in the box. And I was like, what's up, Jan? I wrote you and I was like, here's what was in the box. And you said, no, wait a minute. And so I looked at the label on the box, the shipping label, the UPS shipping label, and it said 7 pounds. And so I put everything back in the box that I took out of it, and it weighed like 3.5 pounds. So there's evidence that the box was heavier when it was weighed and checked in. But somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle, these beers evaporated, and there was no sign of breakage. There was no sign of spillage. There was no sign of leaking. And the box was sealed up nicely. So it's a mystery.
It is a mystery. I just like to think that, maybe the UPS driver had a rough day. And, if you drive with that door open and the wind and, I don't know. So maybe it just went to a good cause. But it's still a shame that they didn't, because the 2 beers that I really wanted you to try didn't make it. So... Yeah.
Yeah, at first I was like, what's this guy up to? What do we But then I completely trust you, Johannes. It's fine. But then I looked at the label and said, sure enough, I would like to know if there are other, brewers out there who have sent beers back and forth, who have had this similar thing happen where beers just kind of mysteriously disappeared from the package, and then the package was like sealed all back up again. It's bizarre. It came
a lot of effort for a homebrew.
And it came a day later than you said it was going to come on Thursday, and it came on a Friday. So, maybe it spent the night at somebody's house. So,
yeah, maybe.
Okay, so we do have one of the beers that you have made with this system, and it is a technique that we haven't talked about yet. An advantage that this system has in brewing certain styles of beer. So it's the bottle cap says LF. So tell me what this beer is, and tell me how you brewed it.
So this beer is kind of an interesting story, because
I hope so.
Well, yeah, yeah, I hope so too. We have a brewery here in Phoenix that's called Wren House Brewing, and they make one beer that's called Las Frescas, and it's a sour beer, and it's described as a sour smoothie beer. So basically it almost tastes like drinking a smoothie, right?
Mm.
So the one that we tried was a peach cobbler. So it was brewed with peach puree and with cinnamon and vanilla.
Oh, wow.
So that's very nice. It was very tasty. And I did some research online where people try to recreate it. And basically it's a Berliner Weisse base beer
Now
brewed
you're
with
showing off
lactose.
you're showing off the proper accent again. So
And it seems like, from what I could gather, is that they add about 1 pound of fruit puree per gallon of beer.
hmm
So with this Ziploc technique, I was thinking, it might be easy actually to do a sour mash with this, because you could just leave the mash in the same Ziploc and then use the sous vide stick to set the temperature to, like, I used 113 degrees Fahrenheit
hmm
um, to do the souring, and I inoculated it with just a handful of uncrushed barley malt,
Right.
put it in the bag, and then left it for 48 hours. And while that was happening, I noticed that the bag was kind of expanding like a balloon.
Ah,
So I had to burp the bag maybe twice a day. And it was not as terrible of a smell as you had, I think, in that 2016 episode with Steve, where you did the sour mash.
right.
But it was still not very pleasant. It kind of smelled a little bit like old cheese.
Well, the fact that you were limiting the oxygen exposure, I think probably helped you out. You didn't get dirty diaper or dumpster.
No, no, I did
Old
not.
cheese, can be good.
Yeah, this is very true. So about 48 hours afterwards, it was nice and tart, not mouth-puckering tart, but tart enough. And then I just went out on with my brew day. I fermented it with a German ale yeast, and then when the whole fermentation was done, I added peach puree to the keg,
Hmm.
directly to the keg.
Oh, wow.
And I made a tincture of cinnamon, and then I also made a vanilla tincture with vodka. And I added that and mixed it to taste into the puree. And I actually made this puree myself. I just bought canned peaches and just, put them in the blender. And I think my wife and I decided that next time we'll just buy professionally made puree because it's less chunky. And I didn't, so I sent you a little jar of that puree because you cannot put it in the bottle because, of course, it'll keep fermenting
Right, right.
once you put it in the bottle.
Well,
And
you were
yeah,
worried about it being not being carbonated, and it's carbonated very well, and the head is beautiful. It's a nice, fluffy white head, and it's persistent. It's not going away. So so you did the initial. You did an initial saccharification rest, say at 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and then cooled down the mash to 113, and then added inoculated it with the grain.
correct. So I actually mashed a little warmer. Let me just pull it up really quick. There we go.
Hmm.
I think I actually mashed at 156.
Okay.
Yeah, to have just a bit more sweetness in that beer.
Boy, it's really good. I haven't added the puree yet, but the beer itself is delicious. I mean, it's nicely tart. It's not overwhelmingly sour or anything. It's there's maybe a teeny tiny butteriness, just a teeny tiny.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's clean, and it tastes fruity even before I add the fruit. So,
Yeah, I get a little bit of fruitiness too, and now in the bottle, I don't really get the cheese anymore. which is good.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't smell any kind of off flavors. It's nice, There's a little bit of a lactic smell, but it's kind of a clean. It's hard to describe. Kind of a clean lactic smell. So I'm gonna smell the puree by itself. Smells like pie.
That's it. That's what we were going for.
It smells good. and it's been unrefrigerated in a UPS truck for a while. So.
Yeah, I did. When I put it in the jar, I actually put it in a water bath at like 180 degrees.
Oh, okay.
To make sure, it won't kill you.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
No, every now and then I open a box of beers, from somebody who I've never met before, and I'm like, man, I'm a trusting soul,
Yeah.
I hope I haven't teed anybody off to the extent that they're gonna want to make me sick or something. Okay, I've put it like a spoonful in there. Oh man, it's really good. The spice and the peach that meld well with the fruitiness of the beer. That's really good. Now I'm even more sad that those other beers didn't come through.
I know. Yeah, it's a pity, but yeah, this was the first attempt. I definitely want to try it again with better fruit puree and just trying to dial in the process a bit more. But it's a fun style. I think especially when summer hits, this could be a nice, fun, fruity style.
Yeah, I mean, you did. I've done those sour mashes, and they were. I've been doing sour worts since then. Just because they're more controllable. But you could do the same thing with your technique. You could collect your wort and put it in a Ziplock bag, and then put that in a water bath.
Right.
Yeah. And then you wouldn't gum up your sous vide machine.
Correct.
And you could hold it indefinitely at your lactic temperature, your temperature that makes the lactic bugs happy.
Yeah. So
yeah, this worked. What can I say?
Yeah. Who could have known? Who would have thought? But yeah, I kind of liked the thought of not even having to remove it from the vessel I did the mash in, which was kind of nice. Yeah.
So, have you thought of any? Now that you've done a few batches, have you thought of any improvements that you think could be made, or you think of any tips to someone who wanted to try this technique themselves?
Yes. So, one very important tip is don't skimp on the quality of the Ziploc bag you use. So,
voice of experience, or does this have something to do with the disaster story?
Well, I don't want to give anything away. You just have to wait till the end of the year. Yeah, don't skimp on the bags. And also be careful not to get any grains in that zip of the Ziploc bag. Because, if you can't really close it anymore, then you might get water into the bag and everything. So, and of course, you have a limit to how much you can put into a 1 gallon bag. I think what I calculated was, let me see, about 2.6 pounds max.
Oh, well.
Unless you make a thicker mash. So that's when you do about a 1.25 quarts per pound. Of course, if you go down to something like a quart per pound, you can, fit some more in there. But yeah, I think
so. Is that
2.5 pounds?
So is that 2 pounds of grain?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, that's what I use for the malt sampler, basically 2 pounds of base malt. And the beers are like 8% alcohol, so
oh yeah,
so that's plenty. That's plenty.
So 2 pounds will do just fine. 2 pounds will fit just fine. And another thing, you can also get these jumbo Ziploc bags, these 2.5 gallon ones. And I've used them for my latest batch. And that works a lot better because you just have a lot more room to work with.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier to open and close them. It's easier to stir the mash in there, when you dough in. All of that it just makes everything easier if you have more space in the bag. Yeah.
Well, I'm always excited to learn a new concept, a new technique. And homebrewers, we are an inventive lot. Necessity and thirst are mothers of invention, I guess. But yeah, I think for someone, especially if you've already got a sous vide stick, and you've got a small space to brew in, and you're brewing small batches, take a look at this technique. Do you have a blog or an Instagram feed or anywhere where people can follow up with you or follow along your adventures?
No, I guess I should. I am on Twitter with J Fahrenkrug as my handle. So I rarely post anything brew related on there. Maybe I should. Yeah, maybe this is an incentive to start something.
You've got an opportunity. You'll be the next mad fermentationist, or you'll be the bag fermentationist. I don't know. Well, this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate your making the effort to brew these beers and send them out, even though they disappeared somewhere. So half of them disappeared somewhere. But it's been a delight, and let us know if you come up with the next step in this technique.
Yeah, I will. I'll be sure to reach out again if there's anything else to report.
Awesome. Thanks, Johannes.
Thanks so much for having me, James.
Well, thanks again to Johannes. The tart beer was delicious, and that makes me really sad that the other beers disappeared in transit. Weird. Has that happened to you? If so, let me know your tales of beers vanishing in the Bermuda Triangle. Apparently handling packages is thirsty work. I don't know what happened. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, weird tales of the Bermuda Triangle or whatever, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voice, and we'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.